take a big sip. I'll go find coffee.
Good morning, my dudes. That is the sound of the coffee being refilled. All right. You know, Sergeant Major, you say that, but I gotta go shoot houses today. Full up. Hey, unverified. I guess we've been off the air long enough for London to catch some good old shut-eye and be with us. Glad to see you this morning. Or good afternoon over there in the land of tea and crumpets. Let's do this. Yeah, my opinion, Sergeant Major, is that taxes are high and people are being, priced out of house and home, all in an attempt to prevent us from being able to practice enough, or to make it harder to buy rounds.
Unless you work for the IRS, then you apparently have got it's in your budget.
Yes. Lethal force is now a line item, an explicit line item.
Yeah, apparently they deleted that.
Yeah, but the internet is forever.
Yeah.
Hadn't actually intended to talk about that this morning, but if you guys missed the TPS report last night, Alex covered it pretty well. And it's worth knowing that they're hiring 87,000 IRS agents, and the job description for these new agents says nothing about relevant knowledge of tax code, tax law. All it says is basically you have to be willing to show up on time, carry a firearm, and murder civilians.
And work overtime.
Oh, and work overtime, yes.
Yeah. That's, that's just not...
Yeah. No mention of knowledge of tax law, none of that. Just, are you willing to kill Americans?
In overtime.
In overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you wouldn't happen to have, nuclear papers, would you? I'd hate for the FBI to come busting in.
I don't have any classified information in this house.
That's a really specific thing to say.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've got a signed picture of Kim Jong-il over there, though. That's hilarious. Let's do some DGUs. You want to read the first one? This one's a follow-up, so it's the story itself is actually a little older, but the follow-up on the finding is from the 5th. And this one comes to us, so from August 5th, a follow-up on Taos County resident Nathaniel Bassett, 36, on murder charges Friday afternoon after a week-long trial.
Okay, so, once again, just as... oh... okay, just... DGUs. Point of the DGUs is... we look for stories that are less than a week old in order to put the lie that good guys with guns never stop bad guys with guns.
Okay, I want to do something real quick, and so I'm going to break the flow a little bit here to improve your workflow for later. I'll read this headline again in a minute, and then we'll just start over on this one. And after I do what I'm about to do the point of the DGUs thing again real quick. But I want to address this in the comments here. Sergeant Major says the goal is to hire agents. I don't think there are 87,000 people available for that work. I'm going to give you some pushback, old man. Here's the problem. And this is probably the biggest problem with the hiring spree. While I think you're right, 87,000 is a pretty high target. The fact of the matter is that we don't have to rely on a pool of 87,000 people who are qualified. The major duties section of the job posting made it very clear that it included no qualification requirements. It didn't say you had to have a law enforcement background, a government work background, a legal background, a background in tax law. There's no requirement to have specific knowledge of the functions of the IRS or tax code or relevant portions of the law. The major duties literally only said the first line is something about upholding the standards of the IRS, which could loosely be interpreted to include that relevant knowledge, but doesn't state it explicitly. And then the rest of it is you must be willing to carry a firearm, you must be willing to use deadly force in the pursuit of your duties, and you must be able to show up on time and work overtime. So what the real problem is, just like with the useless police officers we have rolling out there, is the requirements to be one of these lethal force wielding illegal tax confiscators with a firearm issued by the federal government, paid for by our tax dollars, I might add. The requirements are no higher than to flip burgers at the local McDonald's. But the pay is higher. And so while it may be the case that there aren't 87,000 people waiting around for a job like this who don't have jobs, this job is going to look real sexy to precisely the kind of people you would never want to be intentionally employed by the American government to murder civilians for taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, a bunch of lowest learners. Just as an example. Just putting that out there. So...
What was the guy with the weird upper lip that was almost in charge of the ATF? You know, the baby burner?
Chipman?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, a bunch of Chipmans.
87,000 Chipmans.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, did you make a few extra $1,000 doing DoorDash last year because times were tight and you didn't report that on your taxes properly? Well, pay up, bitch, or we'll murder you.
Okay, Sergeant Major, let me a little more pushback for you. He says, I think the article you're referring to is bogus. The bill is not law yet. There is no authorization to hire. But I'm not referencing an article that may or may not have been bogus. What I'm referencing, Dad, is the actual job posting that was listed on the IRS website, which, after a bunch of criticism from guys like us, not necessarily our criticism directly, but there's been a lot of conversation about it on the interwebs, they have removed it. But of course the internet is forever, so we can get a copy of it and show it to you again. Alex had it for his show on the TPS report last night. It's not bogus. It was in fact the job availability, hiring for these positions, advertisement on the IRS website, advertising to hire these agents.
Don't you cut lawns for cash on the side? Pay up, bitch, or die.
Yeah. So now let's do some DGUs. This one comes to us from August 5th and is a follow-up on an earlier DGU. A jury finds Carson Estates man not guilty of murder.
Okay, and just a quick refresher. The point of the DGUs is to put to lie that good guys with guns never stop bad guys with guns. Our basic rule is it has to be a story that came from the previous 7 days. We bend those rules for exceptional cases and for follow-ups. And in this case, this one is a follow-up, but it's a very important follow-up. So, let's see. This story was, looks like it was published Friday, August 12th, but maybe was written August 5th. Okay, so here we go. A jury acquitted Taos County resident Nathaniel Bassett, 36, on murder charges Friday afternoon, August 5th, after a week-long trial. Bassett was initially charged with first-degree murder after he was accused of shooting and killing 43-year-old William Buchanan at a Carson Estate resident in August, at a Carson Estates resident. I think they mean residence, in August 2020.
I think you're correct.
After 3 full days of witness testimony and arguments by the state and the defense, the jury ultimately found Bassett not guilty of second-degree murder or the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter. Bassett testified Friday morning that he shot Buchanan, but claimed he did so only in self-defense or in defense of others he thought would be harmed. After approximately 2.5 hours, the jury agreed. So that means if the jury deliberates very shortly, there's a thing that lawyers will tell you. If the jury comes back quickly, that's either real good for the defense or real bad for the defense. When they deliberate forever, that's when you end up getting a split verdict and they come back and go, is there a lesser charge we can find them guilty of because we don't think this rises to the level of blah, 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 blah. Buchanan allegedly showed up with 2 other men, and an altercation with the homeowner, Edward Spada Houghton, ensued. When a woman in the house sent out an alert message seeking help, Bassett and another Carson Estates resident, Brian Smith, showed up to help in the situation, according to witness testimony and court documents. As Houghton was being assaulted by Buchanan and one of the other men, according to the testimony, Bassett and Smith arrived at the residence, with Bassett carrying a 22-gauge rifle. Testimony from multiple witnesses indicated Buchanan stopped assaulting Houghton and aggressively approached Bassett and Smith, who were standing at the gate to Houghton's property, yelling at Buchanan and the 2 other men to leave. Bassett admitted firing several shots at Buchanan. An autopsy report shows Buchanan suffered multiple gunshot wounds and succumbed to his injuries. Why did they include that line in these stories? The autopsy report says the guy that was shot to death, in fact,
Was shot to death.
like,
Well, it does give us one of these. I didn't mean one of those. I'm sorry. I meant one.
I don't know if it was a DRT or a DOT. The story doesn't make that clear. Let's see. Bassett and his attorney maintained through the trial that he feared for his life and the lives of others at that property. I've been doing this for 27 years, and you win some and you lose some. I can only say I am relieved, said Bassett's attorney, Thomas Clark. I think in this situation, the jury system worked. The jury reached a proper conclusion. This reaffirms my faith in the jury system. They have the ability to decide hard cases. They made the right decision. This doesn't really sound like a hard case. It sounds like some people showed up at what sounds like a gated community, started beating on somebody's door and even assaulted somebody that lived at that residence. Somebody sent out a text message alert going, help, help. And another resident of the gated community said, oh, bat signal, bet,
Right.
I'm there. And
then they get into the courtroom and they try the case, and the judge doesn't wait until the defense is finished presenting their defense and then look to the jury and say, that's not a valid defense. We're going to ignore the law today.
Boy, that's never going to get old, is it? But no, and look, and here's the thing, right? Right or wrong, like, you got to use some common sense here, people. Right or wrong. Like, let's say Chris pulled a gun on me, and he was absolutely 100% in the wrong for doing so. He's still holding a gun, and maybe I do what he says.
Yep.
You know, it's like I took a defensive driving course.
It's like paying taxes.
I don't think anything's like that. Most other things offer you the opportunity for wine and lube first.
Boika.
So anyhow, but you know, I took a defensive driving course when I was 16, and the instructor of the course had what I found to be very wise words. He said, "Trust me when I tell you, the dump truck always has the right of way."
Yeah, we had a similar saying downrange: incoming fire has the right of way.
So, you know, you've got to you got to think. Okay, you gotta think. All right. Oh, and James is leaving us, but I'm glad you could join us briefly for Firearms Friday. So I don't know if it's DRT or DOT, but
it's D something T.
Yeah, and look, don't assault people.
Yeah.
Right. And I say that as somebody that thinks sometimes maybe violence is in fact the answer, but it sounds like it was the incorrect answer in this situation, at least.
I've got a question. I've got an answer. Let's see if they match.
Never mind. I don't want to play this game. I don't want to play this game. Anyhow, straightforward. Glad this guy found not guilty. The fact that he even went to trial in the first place. Of course, what frightens me is one day we're going to cross the Rubicon and, oh, well, I mean, I literally saw him raping her. Like, he was mid-rape. Yeah, but you shot him in the back. 'Cause he was mid-rape. Yeah, but you shot him in the back. That's murder. But he was mid-rape. Like, you think I'm being hyperbolic.
The correct answer in that situation might be to hide both bodies.
That is actually even darker than I was about to go with it, but okay. All right, I guess we move on to the next story.
You haven't been shot at enough to be really properly dark.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next.
You're Dennis Rodman. I'm Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah, one of those dudes. And one of those dudes is friends with a Korean dictator.
And that's dark. Dark. Okay. So our next story comes out of Middleton, Ohio from August 9th. And this is a good one, guys. Amazon driver acted in self-defense when shooting knife-wielding man. One might say, Middleton, Ohio, an Amazon delivery driver is not facing any charges after he shot a knife-wielding man on Sunday. The driver was out on his route when the suspect, Christopher Roberts, walked up to him with a knife, according to Middletown police. Now, I suspect Amazon, being the bastion of woke that they are, probably has policies against their drivers being armed. I don't know that for sure, but a lot of these globalist, wokey companies that put out crap like
Lord of the Rings,
for starters, will have policies that basically say, oh yeah, you can have a job here, but you don't get rights. Civil liberties aren't part of your employee benefits package.
Well, I mean, it's typical for everything from Uber to taxi companies to pizza delivery drivers. They all say the same thing. Not just that you can't carry a gun, but you can't be armed. No pepper spray. Right. No, not so. Because
your life is not as important as our public image.
That is absolutely correct. And turns out this particular Amazon driver said, "Yeah, no, not today."
Yeah.
Let's. This seems humorous.
So obviously he was in fear. The Amazon driver explained Middleton Police Chief David Burke. So in defense of himself, he was able to discharge a firearm, striking the individual in the leg area. That's unfortunate. The police report shows Roberts was suspected of being under the influence of drugs when he confronted the Amazon driver.
You think?
After being shot in the leg, Roberts ran from the scene. Okay, props.
That's the drugs.
That's the drugs. Ran from the scene and was eventually found by police, who took him to Atrium Medical Center, Chief Burke said. Officers were investigating the shooting to determine if it was done in self-defense when Roberts walked out of the hospital, the chief explained. Him walking away from the hospital kind of helped clarify the situation that the Amazon delivery driver was just defending himself because it's the drugs. So,
I mean, okay, fine. I mean, you put together as much evidence as possible to tell as complete a story as possible, but like, it's a good thing that the guy high as balls walked away from the hospital, or we'd have had no clue what happened
right.
here. And I'm just going to throw this in. There are people that were like, man, my Amazon package has been 1.5 miles away for like 4 hours. What is going on?
Wow, and Alex says, now come on, you can't go giving employees rights. The next thing you know, they'll be unionized. Alex, that may be the best argument I've ever heard in defense of depriving people of civil liberties.
Okay. Let's do it again.
Unions were a good idea once, a long time ago. And then, like every other good idea fairy dropping that ever fell in somebody's ear, a Democrat got involved, and that was the end of the law. Okay, you want to take this one there, Cameron?
Sure.
I'm supposed to read the headline and all the stuff for the editing process for later, right?
That'd be nice.
Okay.
There's a date for you.
So this one, you scrolled away from the date before I could read it. So this one comes from Federal Way, Washington, published on August 9th of this year. A deadly road rage shooting in Federal Way considered self-defense, police say.
Well, that's not a loaded headline. Let's see. Police said a man was shot and killed Monday afternoon after a hit and run escalated into a deadly road rage shooting along a Federal Way roadway. Man, it's some people and traffic. Officers were called to the 800 block of South 322nd Street just before 12:15 p.m. Monday for a hit-and-run crash. The Federal Way Police Department said the two people involved stopped in the middle of the roadway and started a physical alteration. Woo! I saw that once. I saw two guys hit each other in an intersection, and one of them came flying out of the car, threatening the other one, and it was this, like, creaky old man who was being screamed at, and eventually this huge young boy leaned his head in and actually told him, said, I will beat your ass. And I swear this old man did this, like, Superman move, came out of the car, fist first, and whack! And they started brawling right there in the street. Anyhow, during the altercation, police said one of the people involved grabbed a gun from the vehicle and fired it toward a man who was identified as a 35-year-old Federal Way resident. Investigators said the man later died from his injuries. He was identified as a 35-year-old person. Nice job of identification there. The initial investigation found that it was self-defense shooting, police said. William Kirk, an attorney specializing in firearms law, said more needs to be determined in the incident before a self-defense claim can be granted. William Kirk, an attorney specializing in firearms law. I wonder what kind of firearms law. He said from a legal standpoint, the force that is used has to be necessary and reasonable. And then finally, and this is the one where most people get themselves in trouble, the force we use has to be proportional to the force that we are trying to repel, Kirk said. A person was brought in for questioning, but there have been no arrests. The Federal Way, Police Department said detectives were still processing the crime scene. As of 10:30 a.m. Tuesday, South 322nd Street will remain closed until the investigation is complete.
Okay, I got a couple of things here.
A lot of words from that attorney there. That
this attorney specializing in firearms law, notice it doesn't say that he specializes in firearms defense law or Second Amendment law.
Yeah.
It says he specializes in firearms law. I can tell you a lot from this sentence. This guy is a professional criminal. He is engaged in the profession of defending laws which are unconstitutional. And he's making an argument here. He mentions the proportionality. He's attempting to suggest that because the other person didn't have a firearm, that the use of a firearm was disproportionate, was unnecessary force. He's not saying it outright, but he's making the argument that this isn't a guaranteed slam dunk. And under the law, he's technically correct. This isn't a guaranteed slam dunk finding of self-defense.
Under the law are.
But hold on.
Sorry.
But this idea of proportionality, he wants you to believe that proportionality means that unless the other person has a gun, you cannot use a firearm to defend your life. And let me clear you up real quick. I guarantee you, you can be beat to death with the bare hands of a strong man. Give it enough time, you could be beat to death with the bare hands of a weak female, but the bare hands of a strong man can absolutely destroy you.
Yeah.
And absolutely qualify as sufficient deadly threat to justify the use of any amount of deadly force necessary to defend your life.
Yeah, everything about the way that that's written, like, oh, okay, it has to be proportional. So you're telling me that if I'm being raped, my defense is to rape
them back?
Because I could tell you that's probably not going to happen. And Alex from the TPS report points out another fantastic bit of language. Before a self-defense claim can be granted, I wasn't aware that the state granted you defense. Well,
and that's exactly the problem with people. We know this guy voted for Biden. We know that William Kirk voted for Joe Biden. I'd bet my eye teeth on it. And here's why we know that. Because these are the sort of people that vote for a guy like Biden, the sort of people that continue to defend the indefensible state of our government and our law, the indefensible actions of our police officers, our FBI, our DOJ, etc. These are people who believe that the rights you have are granted to you by government generally, that they are not endowed upon you inertly from your creator, and that those rights are fungible, revocable, at the whim of a lawmaker who, I might add, is not the creator from whom these rights are derived. These people are intolerable. They hate you, and they want you vulnerable.
Well, this is how you end up with that duty to retreat bullshit. Like, okay, and the problem with duty to retreat is when you pass a law like duty to retreat, the burden always falls on the victim. Well, you didn't run away hard enough before you fought back. Says who? Says this district attorney who's convinced this jury. A separate district attorney and a separate jury might look at the exact same set of facts and go, oh no, they tried like hell to run away. This satisfies a duty to retreat. It's one of those malleable, that's why I'm a big fan of the whole stand your ground and castle doctrine, because that is clear. That is a bright line of demarcation, okay? Especially when they go ahead and they're smart enough to include your vehicle. Now let me just be clear though. If you shoot somebody after a car accident, you're probably making poor life decisions.
Yes.
Okay, I can understand how in this particular case, the cops were like, no, we're going to investigate the shit out of this before we let you go. I think that's actually reasonable in this particular case. But everything, like we got a story that's only like 10 paragraphs long, and 3 of the paragraphs are from this attorney that's like, oh, well, and this is where most people get themselves in trouble, the force has to be proportional. And as you were pointing out, before you came to Heritage in what would have been our 9th grade year, there was like the first or second day of school, there was a fight right there in the commons area in the cafeteria. 2 football players, I don't know what the beef was. One of them punched the other one in the face and it rocked his head back and he hit the cinder block wall behind him, rung his belly, fell right over, scared the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
Okay? And, I mean, even the guy throwing the punch, it scared the shit out of him, because obviously, suddenly things... Now, the kid ended up being fine, but it's literally that easy. Like, your simple assault and battery can become aggravated assault and aggravated battery and attempted murder and voluntary manslaughter real quick, just from an accident. You knock a dude out, he falls over and hits the pavement the wrong way and dies, you're looking at manslaughter charges. So your proportional force charges, like, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, oh, wait, excuse me. Are you just going to slap me around a little bit and then we're done? Or do I need to get my gun?
Yeah, and if you haven't spent a lot of time punching people in the face who are used to being punched in the face a lot, you might surprise yourself how very little it takes to actually end a life just throwing one solid punch to a head. You'd be amazed. That's one of those things that it's like being a parent or getting laid for the first time. You don't really know what you're talking about until you get over the other side of that threshold.
And then you're like,
and then you cannot adequately explain it to somebody who is not on the other side of that threshold. How do you know when you're a grown man? How do you know when you're adult? Well, you know, but can you make a child understand the difference?
No.
Can you explain that to a child in a way that they understand it? No. It's an experience that you must have.
So, I bet we could squeeze in one more, you think? Yes?
Right, and Alex is backing up my point here. Proportional doesn't mean meeting a knife with a knife. It means meeting force with force. That's probably the easiest element to meet. And that was the point that I was making there, is that this lawyer is trying to kind of twist the language on the proportionality of force question. And it's one of those where, without saying conspiracy to defraud the American people, you want people to believe that that's the case. Right, he's using those weasel words and that Russell conjugation to try and suggest that it's not self-defense with a firearm unless the other guy had a firearm. I've got enough time. We can try to do one more. You want to read this one?
Sure.
Okay. I've got 3 more pulled up. You want to read this one? Or this one? Or it's got to be this one.
I think that would, yeah.
I think that's the obvious choice.
Yep.
Okay. So this one comes to us from August 7th out of Indianapolis. Indiana homeowner fatally shoots intruder. If you come and take it, there's consequences.
Based. Based. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I really am. Let's see. An armed robbery suspect was fatally shot by an Indiana homeowner during a midnight home invasion on July 29th. I think we got him. Well, it could still be a DOT.
It could be.
But still, like, an armed robbery suspect was fatally shot by an Indiana homeowner during a midnight home invasion on July 29th. And look, Indiana is red as fuck, okay? But armed robbery, home invasion. Yeah, okay. If there was any doubt. In the second time in the past 8 years that Howard Murphy has shot an intruder. Oh my God. Woo!
You know what? I'm going to give Howard Murphy top comment.
Woo. In the second time in the past 8 years that Howard Murphy has shot an intruder to defend himself inside his house, WRTV reported. If they don't understand, then I guess I'm going to have to make them understand. Referring to the criminals who have broken into his home. Well, there's going to be one less. The latest incident occurred in the 900 block of the West 34th Street near the Crown Hill Cemetery.
This one's for Mom. My mother says he must have some good shit.
He still has it, too.
He still does.
The latest incident occurred in the 900 block of the West 34th Street near the Crown Hill Cemetery shortly after 4 a.m. on July 29th, Wish reported. Murphy said that he heard someone break out a side window of his house, so he grabbed his gun and headed downstairs to confront the intruder. According to WANE, Murphy said the suspect, later identified as 64-year-old Steve Shepard, was inside his living room where he intercepted him rifling through his belongings. Wow, 64-year-old
Steve, you couldn't have held on for another few months and started collecting Social Security? You'd have been okay, man.
Man.
Not great.
You know what you
could eat?
Look, let's just point it out, okay? Most burglars don't make it to their 60s.
Correct.
That is a high-risk, mediocre reward occupation. He said he'd never met Shepard before. He took a video game system and threw it at me.
Wee!
just want to make like all the Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty jokes and
We were watching Big Bang Theory the other night, and they're sitting on the couch playing the games, and Sheldon says something about the speed limit, and Leonard says, "You're playing Grand Theft Auto. You're driving a stolen Lamborghini with a kilo of coke and a dead hooker in the trunk. I don't think anybody cares about the speed limit." Yes, but I choose to follow the rules. That's what makes it fun.
Oh. Shepard, who was allegedly armed with a knife, was hit by at least one of the rounds, Wayne reported. It happened so fast, Murphy told WRTV. He was still holding the knife when he ran to the upstairs area of the home. I honestly didn't even know if he'd been shot because he was still moving around and running. The homeowner said the intruder ultimately died in the upstairs bedroom, so it was a DRT. According to Murphy, he lost thousands of dollars worth of electronics earlier the same week after someone broke into his residence. WANE reported he does not know if Shepard was involved in that incident or not. I hate that it happened. I hope these other guys learn a lesson from it. There's plenty of spots over in Crown Hill Cemetery. I don't want it to be like that.
My man!
Oh.
Just keep throwing them, man. Just keep throwing them.
Man, this guy's got like a bullet hose of red pills. But just like the average worker, I work hard for what I've got. If you come and take it, there's consequences behind that. Murphy was also the victim of a home invasion at the same address in November of 2014. He took a gamble thinking I wasn't there, and I happened to be there, he said, referring to the suspect involved in that break-in. Murphy said the suspect grabbed for an object and was preparing to hit him, so he shot him in the leg. Man, shot him in the leg, and he still died. That femoral artery, man.
What did you shoot him with? Dude's throwing wheeze. Old boy comes around the corner with a maw deuce. Just got it mounted to one of those camera rigs with the belly strap.
You know, seriously, sometimes you want to ask these guys, it's like, you started throwing shit at the guy that was armed. Why weren't you just assholes and elbows? You already had a window broken out. Your entrance and exit. Well,
TPS report asked the question, do you think it would be reported the same way had Murphy been a white homeowner and made those statements? No. In fact, I think it would have gone entirely unreported.
Or racist homeowner.
Well, actually, you know, that's probably true. The McMichaels had a pretty solid defense, and they got charged twice. They got charged for extra murder because racism.
Yeah, that's
How is that not double jeopardy? I'm not going down that path today, y'all.
Because apparently hate crimes are a totally separate charge.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, Unverified Bear points out worst place to shoot someone you don't want to kill. Yeah, that's entirely accurate. When they're like, well, why don't they just shoot her in the leg?
Yeah,
there's a lot of blood vessels in your legs,
especially that femoral artery, and like, you know, kind of like punching somebody in the face, raising kids, or losing your virginity. I'm telling you guys, you don't know until you've had to patch a femoral artery. That's a squirrely little motherfucker that keeps it's like a strong worm that keeps trying to escape as you try to pinch it off. You don't want that. That's not the one you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So it has
go watch the pig video.
Nope. It has been so many jokes, and I'm not making them. It says hit the off switch, be a headshot advocate. Yes. Yeah.
You know, in boxing, I was always a big fan of the there's two buttons on the head. There's two switches, right? There's the reset button and there's the off switch. Right? And guaranteed, you tap that button, it will have the desired effect. The reset button, it just makes them go pause. You get that, you know, you I don't need a gun. I've got a donk. A what? A donk.
So, can you Can you instruct me not to live my best life, please?
Okay, so going into the weekend, this is the safety brief for Mario. It's okay sometimes not to choose the possible adventure. Sometimes the better choice is to make it home with your pants on and no injuries from the available concertina wire. You keep more phones and ID cards that way. So don't drive drunk, don't fry bacon naked, and don't go crawling through military security fields in the dark without your senses. Y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we'll see you on Monday.